You're listening to Whoa! Potluck.
And welcome to Books and Boba, a book club and podcast featuring books by Asian and Asian American authors. My name is Marvin Yue.
And I'm Rira Yu.
And we're your hosts for the Books and Boba April Book Club pick, One Day We'll All Be Dead and None of This Will Matter by Scaachi Koul.
I found out that her name is actually Scaachi because I read the acknowledgments at the very end.
Really?
And
so you've been letting me mispronounce your name
all
this time just for the sick burn right now.
Well, like, did you read the acknowledgments?
I just finished it and I closed it.
Well, like, half of her acknowledgments is written by her father. And it's really funny because he mentions, he was like, oh, if she doesn't portray me in, like, a good light, well, I've had my revenge because her name is spelt with a silent C. And I was like, oh, a silent C? That means her name is Scaachi.
That is nefarious. Okay. One Day We'll All Be Dead and None of This Will Matter by Scaachi Koul. I'm going to edit that so it makes it sound like I finished that correctly the first time.
No, you won't. You won't edit it.
And on the cover, We'll All Be Dead and None of This is actually crossed out. So the title also reads, One Day This Will Matter. Very clever.
And the synopsis goes, or the book jacket summary goes, in One Day We'll All Be Dead and None of This Will Matter, Scaachi deploys her razor-sharp humor to share her fears, outrages, and mortifying experiences as an outsider growing up in Canada. Her subjects range from shaving her knuckles in grade school, to a shopping trip gone horribly awry, to dealing with internet trolls, to feeling out of place at an Indian wedding as an Indian woman, to parsing the trajectory of fears and anxieties that pressed upon her immigrant parents and bled down a generation. Alongside these personal stories are pointed observation about life as a woman of color, where every aspect of her appearance is open for critique, derision, or outright scorn, where strict gender rules bind in both Western and Indian cultures, forcing her to confront questions about gender dynamics, racial tensions, ethnic stereotypes, and her father's creeping mortality, all as she tries to find her feet in the world. Wow, that is a doozy of a synopsis.
So this book is a collection of essays written by Scaachi.
Yes, I thought it was a memoir, but
it kind of
is
as a memoir. Yeah. With each chapter, there's a loose through line throughout the essays, but each chapter is kind of an individual anecdote.
Yeah. So Marvin, since you read this last night,
well, before we start, just as always, a quick spoiler warning that we're going to be discussing this book in this book club discussion. So if you don't want to get stuff spoiled for you, or if you haven't read it yet, now is the time to push pause and go read the book and come back after you're done. And if you don't feel like reading this book right now, you can read our May book club pick, which is The Leavers by Lisa Ko, which is out on paperback right now. So
no excuses.
No excuses. Okay, so let's get started.
So Marvin, since you read this last night, you have a fresher take on the book.
I guess.
I was really curious when I finished this book, because I finished it a couple weeks ago, how you would, what your take would be, because this is definitely geared towards women of color, especially. So,
well, yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of lady stuff.
Stuff, okay. What's with that tone there?
No, lady stuff, which, it was interesting to read.
Well, is there a specific essay or story that really struck a chord with you or was memorable?
Well, Scaachi's a very she's a really great writer. A lot of her essays, they range from talking about serious subject, but also including humor and funny anecdotes. The chapter that I guess that stuck with me would be the one describing her going to her cousin's wedding in India and returning as an adult and seeing the effects of her privilege in terms of colorism and colonialism everywhere, right? And I think that I reacted to that the most because I just came back from a trip to Asia, and as an adult or as a member of like the diaspora, right? Mm-hmm. When you go back to the mother country, there is this feeling that you don't actually belong here. You feel comfortable, or you feel like you should feel comfortable, but you're still very much aware that you're different. Right?
Yeah. I went to Korea for the first time in 8 years last year. Mm-hmm. And it was definitely a trip. Let me tell you that. Korea has changed a lot within 8 years. But like for a lot of Koreans, they don't see Korean Americans as Americans because, our face, like we look ethnically the same. And even the word kyopo, which is like Korean, a Korean who is living abroad, that's exactly what it means. And I definitely felt that where, because I went for a wedding and everything was really weird. It was a modern Korean wedding, so it was like a mix of American wedding, like Western weddings with like the whole white wedding dress, but a lot of it was very different from how we do weddings here. We have like big parties and they last like a couple hours, and there's a lot of like planning involved. But weddings in Korea, or at least the modern weddings, you go to a wedding hall and everything is kind of like sped up, kind of like a convenience store way. It's pretty much like a conveyor belt of brides.
A mass-produced
It is a very mass-produced wedding, and the ceremony itself lasts less than 30 minutes.
Really?
Yes.
That's like the polar opposite of what Scaachi went through in her 7-day Indian wedding.
Yeah, that was really interesting too, because I've never been to an Indian wedding despite having Indian friends.
Yeah,
but none of them are married.
One of those people that Scaachi talks about in her book who's never been to an Indian wedding.
I thought the Indian wedding chapter was really interesting because she talks about her cousin who's getting married, and she says that I think her cousin's name is Sweetu.
Yeah.
Sweetu is an empowered woman. She is
the youngest daughter, but she went to England for education.
she was educated abroad, and she definitely grew up with a lot of like Western ideals. Mm-hmm. But she's doing this traditional wedding, and a lot of it
arranged too.
Yeah,
right?
It's arranged, and also a lot of the traditions are
very patriarchal.
Yeah, very patriarchal. It doesn't, and she talks about how there is this duality, and even though you're like a quote unquote modern woman, it doesn't make you less of like a feminist for wanting a traditional wedding that is rooted in sexism.
But at the same time, she notices all like the inequalities of the ceremony, right? Like she sees, oh yeah, there's a dancer who's performing for them, which is a guy in drag. And the reason for that is because women aren't allowed to dance in front of men.
Yeah, and like Sweetu actually tells Scaachi, like, yeah, this is like a big joke on women.
Yeah.
And we live in a very hypocritical country. But like, they laugh about it because, it's like a weird gray area.
Well, I mean, it's like how Chinese people laugh about like how cheap we are. Like we laugh at our stereotypes. Like I'm sure Korean people laugh at their own stereotypes too, or their what was it, the Han, which is a big issue right now, or a big talking point right now because of the North and South Korea.
We talked about it in our pachinko discussion. So if you guys want to check that out later, definitely do so.
It also reminded me of like it caused me to think about like Western marriage, like wedding culture, and how that is also a little patriarchal too, right? Like I was just at a wedding where basically the bridesmaids and the bride did all this work. They had to get up super early to get their hair done, to get their makeup done, to set up all the tables and everything. And the groomsmen were just drinking all day.
Yeah. I'm also not a fan of American weddings where the father gives the bride away to the groom, because I'm just like,
I mean, that's carryover from...
I know, I know, but I don't like it.
It's the whole idea of like, it's the bride that leaves her family to join this other family. That's so rooted in like the transactional nature of weddings from the olden days that...
Yeah, but during her time in India for this wedding, Scaachi realizes her shadeism privilege.
Yeah, it was really interesting to read her start to notice that all the service workers are darker skinned.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas all the like women in like sales or more retail positions are lighter skinned.
Yeah, and because she is part of the Kashmiri community, she has fairer skin than most Indians do. And she talks about how in Canada, because she's Canadian, she's not white and she's part of the minority, no matter how fair she is. And she actually has a quote about her fairness and about working in Canada with that kind of privilege. Mm-hmm. And she said, "I'm not white, no, but I'm just close enough that I could be, and just far enough that you know I'm not. I can check off a diversity box for you, and I don't make you nervous. At least not on the surface. I'm the whole package." I really love her sarcastic humor in the book, because it really like hits you randomly. It's very it softens the blow of a lot of serious topics, because this book is kind of sad.
A little bit.
Ways.
It goes through a lot of just a lot. I liked reading about her niece, Raisin.
Yeah.
Who
is mixed race. Her mom is white and her father is Indian.
Yeah.
And
how they're all super excited about her complexion, except for like her nose.
Yeah.
Which is in her words, definitely an Indian nose.
Yeah, and she talks about Raisin being able to integrate or assimilate much more easily than she did. And
well, she talks a lot about assimilation and just the like what immigration does to a culture, right? How
she says immigration is so much about loss.
Yeah.
And truth.
How she views her heritage as like something that she is missing a lot. Like she has the pieces, but not the whole picture. But she also thinks about Raisin, who like doesn't even think about it at all. And like, what will her children, and how like, you know, in a few generations, like, will they even think about the old culture? Yeah.
Will they hold on to traditions, because they don't have memories of like living there, and everything is like handed down from families.
In the essay, I forgot which essay it was. It was the second to last one, right, where she was visiting her father's old house.
Mm-hmm. She said that like the house seemed to be, I don't know, this like dream. Like all of her family members are like living in one house, and you have like mango trees in the background, and it's very like idyllic. Like
yeah.
And I think that's true, because I think a lot of immigrant parents, they kind of romanticize the motherland. And she does mention this. She mentions that her father romanticizes his childhood home a lot, but he was so quick to leave India because he hated living there. And it's just like, oh yeah, that's like that's part of like the diaspora story, I think.
Yeah. And she juxtaposes that with her own childhood home, and how she like has nightmares about her parents dying and having to like decide whether or not to keep the house.
Yeah. And also just like how like the house was pretty like full, but then
Yeah.
after her and her brother left, it's just like her parents and her niece coming over like
Yeah.
from time to time. And she talks about how when she goes to visit, her mom like has moved everything, and she's just like, it seems like an insult. Like,
Yeah,
how
she's
dare
like, this
you?
is like her mom moved the forks as like a way to drive me crazy. Which is true. Like when I go home and stuff isn't where I remember them being, I get a little frustrated.
I mean, my parents have moved houses like 3 times since I left college, so I don't know where anything is all the time. So I'm pretty used to it, but I could understand. Like you cling on to, like, you know, when you're younger, like your parents are brave for you, and when you're an adult, you have to be brave for yourself.
And that's another theme in this book as well as death dreams, or like thinking about dying.
I liked how she described her anxiety. It's not like a big inspirational story. It's just like, oh, it's part of my life, and I constantly think about my parents dying, and I'm like, yeah, I can totally relate to that.
Or like her fear of flying and how like
like she talks about how that kind of anxiety has been passed down from her parents, because her parents are very anxious and very fearful. They're like, why are you moving so far away for college? Like, you're sick? I'll come over to you. And they tell her not to like go abroad because like, what is there out for you?
And not even that. It's like, you're going abroad. What did that ever do to you?
It's like, how dare you?
Are you mad at me? Is that where you're going on this
Treat me
trip?
like a demigod. Oh my God. The in between
the chats.
the
right?
chats like with her dad, they're so funny. I love her dad. And I heard that the audiobook for this book was narrated by Scaachi, and parts of it was narrated by her father.
Oh.
So I really want to listen to the audiobook now.
Yeah, what was your favorite essay in the book?
I would say that the 2 essays that really struck a chord with me was The Hunting Ground, which is about surveillance culture and rape culture, and how a lot of people blame women for not guarding their drinks, and also how a lot of people see rape culture as, you know, some kind of van coming up and duct taping your mouth. And really, it's a lot more subtle than that. It's about men watching you the moment you walk into the door and counting how many drinks you have and kind of encouraging you to take more drinks, or even drugging you in the process. And, you know, like you can always say no, but when you get drunk enough and you can't say the words, then somehow it's okay, according to society.
Yeah.
And that really struck a chord with me, because obviously I am a woman and I have gone through situations like that before. So, I was like while I was reading it.
A theme that she comes back to a lot is just the double standard between like how people treat women. You have all these expectations to be, you know,
All the things, pretty much.
All
You
the
have to be
things.
demure, educated, but not progressive enough that you will disappoint your parents or break tradition. It's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of the burden is placed on women.
they want you to look good, but if that attracts attention, then that's your fault for looking too good,
Yeah.
right?
Like, the one thing that really hit me was her talking about how there's this very thin line between like, oh, normal patriarchy, I'll just ignore it, whatever, you're a misogynistic dude, versus you need to run. like that line is so thin. And I could definitely relate to that. There has been multiple times when I would go to some kind of social gathering, and I hate parties. I hate going out. So it's always really frightening when I go to these events and like you meet new people, but there is like a sinister.
You get that attention that you don't feel.
There have been
good
multiple
around,
times when I've been followed home, and that's really scary. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how else I can explain that, but like I think every woman can relate to that, because you get a lot of unwanted attention no matter what your appearance is, or
Yeah.
like no matter how you say no or how many drinks you have, like it really doesn't matter. Like I think every woman knows how it feels to be kind of looked upon as if you're meat. And like there have been other cases where I would be at a party, and I'm a very paranoid person. I'm also very much like Scaachi, where like when I get a drink from a bar, I make sure I watch the bartender and like make sure like I can see how the drink is being made. I don't accept drinks from strangers, or even friends sometimes. And like there have been cases where like I would see someone. There have been a few cases where like I've seen a guy roofie a girl, and I would like go up to the girl and I have no idea who they are, and I'm just like, hey, like, hello, friend, let's come over here. like you don't want to hang out with that guy. And it really sucks when you have to rely on like strangers, like other like strange women to like protect you or to keep an eye out for you. Another essay, I mean, it's very similar to The Hunting Ground, but another essay that like I really liked was the Twitter one, and the essay was called Mute, and it was
like the ones that are really
sinister. But I think we should talk about that a little bit later, because I do want to talk about like her interracial relationship with Hamhawk, and like how her family reacted to it, and like the double standard, because her brother married a white woman, and he lived with his wife before they got married. And her parents were like kind of mad, but they weren't like full blown angry at him.
I mean, I'm sure they were, but they blocked it out.
Yeah, but like I don't know, like I feel like especially in East Asian culture, I'm not sure about Southeast or South Asian culture, but guys get away with a lot of things. And like I could definitely relate, because I'm in an interracial relationship. I am dating a white guy, and I get a lot of shit for that from especially Asian guys who are just like, Asian girls who date white guys are like a traitor to their kind, or like why do Asian girls like not find Asian guys sexy? And I correct them saying, hey, I'm a K-pop fan, I find Asian guys very sexy. But yeah, there's like,
I mean, that's mostly internet guys too, right?
I guess. I mean, they're the same breed pretty much. But with my parents, they didn't freak out as much as Sachi's parents, who weren't even okay with her dating another brown boy who happened to be Pakistani.
Her parents seem to be extra dramatic, though. But I mean, I feel like because it's her perspective, she feels like she's getting rained on hard on, but I'm sure her brother got a lot of shit too. He's the oldest son of this family.
No, I think it was a lot. Like he got away with a lot more than she did. Because with girls, it's just like how dare you? Your chastity, and you have to be demure, and like.
But I feel like with the oldest son, it's like, what about our family line, our pure blood? Remember, she mentioned a lot about like how they wanted to keep the blood pure. Yeah,
like I think there was a joke in there saying like, oh, we can't marry other Kashmiris because we're all distant cousins, and like think about the children that we will have. They might come out messed up.
I enjoyed reading how he was like, he's like your, not typical, I wouldn't say typical, but he's like,
she calls him a precious moron, and
yeah,
I kind of agree with her.
He's totally a bro.
Like she, like in the Indian wedding chapter, she talks about how like her boyfriend Hamhawk, which is not his real name. I mean, obviously it's not his real name.
It's a pretty dope name if it is.
But like he says like, I want to get married, and he really wants like this big fantastic wedding where it's like a huge bash with his friends. And
he said I love you within the first 2 weeks, right?
I mean, it happens. Like, but like she's just like, oh, you're a precious moron because you've never been to an Indian wedding, and you've never spent like 7 days doing all the things that like with the chants and like the bathing of like milk, like you weren't there. And, you know, even if you were there, you would be just drinking with your buds, and you don't know what I have to sacrifice. So like, yeah, like I thought that was like really interesting because like when you bring someone who is not the same race as you, who wasn't raised in the same with the same cultural ideals as the one that you grew up in, there is a lot of like explaining or
introducing,
or you just kind of get thrown into it and there's really no backing out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, the plus side is he seems like a pretty adventurous dude. I mean, he's the one that got her to go to Thailand with him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when she finally introduces, actually even before she introduces him to her parents, like she lied to her parents saying like, oh, I broke up with him because her mom just kind of flipped out. And like her...
Well, there's the interracial angle, but there's also another aspect to her relationship that even her brother was like, "Oh yeah, that would be tough."
Yeah, because she's he's like 13 years older than her.
Yeah, which is 1 year older than her brother.
But like her, like Ham Hock is like, oh, it's okay. Like I'll go meet your parents, and I'll be my charming self, and like I'll win your dad over. And she's just like, no, you will not. Like it will take years. Like you're not aiming for them to like you. You're aiming for them to accept you.
I mean, it sure seems like they decided to hate him on principle more than his personality.
Yeah, I was like. I mean, I found it like really funny, and also it's just like, yeah, that's sadly the truth. There's a lot of hoops you have to go through when you're in an interracial relationship, and it made me sad because I'm in one, and oh boy, like, oh boy.
I feel like it's the hardest when you're the first in your entire family to have one, but if other members of your family have interracial relationships, from my experience, the family starts to get used to it.
They just give up after at some point.
I mean, you guys immigrated to a country of immigrants. Some mixing's going to happen.
Yeah.
She did mention, I think it was one of her biology teachers were talking about, they were learning about recessive and dominant genes. Mm-hmm. And this was the chapter about hair. But how the teacher was kind of upset or sad that like one day we'll all just be mixed.
One day we will all be beige.
Yeah.
Like we won't have
dark
beautiful
hair, brown eyes.
Yeah, we won't have beautiful like blue eyes anymore or whatever. And I'm just like, did you do that in high school with the whole like recessive dominant genes?
We had to. It's
yeah. I mean, did you do the experiment where like you're paired up with someone?
Oh no, we were just given worksheets.
Well, I had to go through that.
Really?
Yeah, and it sucked.
Really?
Like, I was paired up with a blonde-haired white dude.
Oh, then you took over his genes. It's like, you have no chance, buddy. Our kids are going to be brown and brown.
Yeah, but like so like her classmate James, like he makes fun of her because he like mentions her hairy arms, and she goes home and she's like very self-conscious about it, and she shaves like a part of her arm, and she's like, I'm not going to let him tell me what to do. I'm beautiful the way I am. And then she goes back to school and he sees the bald patch and he's just like, oh, did you like shave because of something I said? And the joke in that story was, James works in finance now. He lives in Boston. We are all eventually punished for our sins.
What's wrong with Boston?
I don't know. I like Boston.
That was a fun essay, all about her relationship with her hair, about how being Indian and inheriting all that comes with being Indian adds like basically a whole plethora of things for her like daily regime.
She mentions how like Indian hair is coveted, right? It's like thick, luscious, and like shiny, and like a lot of white women are like, oh, like what do you use for your hair?
Yeah.
But they only care about the hair on her head. They don't care about the hair on her arms or her face. And it's like, cause like she does mention like, oh, Indian hair is coveted, but like black hair, it's just like black women can't do anything with it because everyone is mad. And there is like a sense of colonialism when it comes to hair, and it it really caters towards whiteness and white genes, and I thought that was like a very interesting essay to read.
Yeah. Especially the part where she gave her waxer a panic attack. I mean, it ends on a pretty positive note where she's just saying, these days I just like, sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't.
Yeah, and she's just like, well, like, I didn't do it for a while, and, you know, I figured I actually like this, so I'm just going to do it for me and not for my boyfriend, or because society is just like, this is the beauty standard.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing that comes up a lot is just the standards put upon women to look a certain way.
Yeah, and it really sucks because like a woman who wears makeup is like you're saying like, oh, she's shallow or superficial, and a girl who doesn't wear makeup, she's considered lazy and and ugly, and it's like there's really no way to win, so just do whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I also really liked how she talked about clothes and like how there's this ideal where if you find the right clothes, it will like transform you and automatically make you into like.
See, this is what I meant by like lady stories.
Lady stories.
Like
don't guys feel that way though? Like guys are just like, oh, if I like wear this shirt or this pair of jeans, like it'll make me look slimmer and more manly, or. Maybe I've been with a lot of fashion conscious guys.
Probably.
But like they're like a lot of guys that I have met who have been very fashion conscious. They obsess over little things like accessories or whatever.
I let my girlfriend obsess for me.
Oh,
I don't
well.
think about that stuff.
Aren't you lucky?
But that was another essay with a really funny anecdote of her.
Oh, when her dress zipper gets caught and she has to be cut out.
So she finds like this perfect skirt or dress.
Yeah.
It was like wool, right?
Yeah.
At this store that she used to work at as a teen, whose manager used to be her coworker. And she gets stuck in it, and then they have to cut it off.
Like she mentions how like she is considered a plus size, especially when it comes to other Indian girls, right? Like when she goes to buy traditional Indian clothing for her cousin's wedding, like her mom is very frustrated because she's just like, nothing fits, or this is not the right color or fabric, and you know there is nothing more.
Did her mom also complain that her boobs are bigger than hers?
Yeah, her boobs are bigger than hers, her hips are bigger than hers, or whatever. But like, you lose so much confidence when you aren't the quote unquote right size, right? And like when you do find clothes that fit you, it feels like a freaking miracle, right? And you kind of hope that it will transform you into a better version of yourself. And I mean, I'm not considered a plus size in America, but I definitely am considered plus size in Korea. And like, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with my body, but it is like, it does make me feel a little bit bad when I try to buy like pants or whatever, and it's like a size 2, and that's considered like a normal size. And I'm just like, I'm 5'5", and these girls are 5'2", 5'3", and nothing fits me, and it's really, it ruins your confidence.
I had this problem in Asia where I was like, I bought a couple t-shirts from Uniqlo because they typically fit me pretty well, but I didn't realize that the Uniqlo sizes in Asia are cut shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Marvin is like 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
So probably were like capris to you.
It almost was. I was like, okay, I'm not wearing any of these out.
I guess since I said we'll come back to it later, we should talk about the Twitter essay.
Yeah, this is another bright and shiny story from Scaachi Koul. Because her job is as a writer, right? She writes for BuzzFeed.
Yeah, she's a BuzzFeed contributor. I'm not sure if she's like I think she's an editor.
Okay.
Because she did mention she was an editor.
Yeah, but this is when she was writing for, I'm assuming, a paper because she had an editor. And she is and as a public person in the press, she had a Twitter account where she was very active about. I liked how the essay started with her first computer.
Yeah, millennials, you know?
And getting wired internet for the first time, which didn't happen for me till about the same time she did, actually.
Yeah.
I think she said it was 2003. I first got my first wired internet in 2002 when I went to college. And then how that led to, she was talking about, what was the Canadian version of MySpace?
I don't remember, but it sounded terrible. It was like a mix of Tinder and rate my professor, but only with your classmates.
Yeah.
It sounded really terrible. But at the same time, she talks about how small it was and how even anything bad happening in the digital world, it really didn't bleed into your real life. And there was really no consequence. And as the internet community expanded, it brought a lot of distilled rage, and it gave people anonymous identities, and they were able to yell and get away with it.
Yeah. And she's the type of person, I guess, who engages. So, one of these, which is the opposite of what I do. I tend to try to avoid online conflict where I can. But for the most part, she seemed like she was able to handle it until it got real bad.
Until the incident, and the incident was when she was an editor and she tweeted, "I would like to hire non-white, non-male voices for future feature articles." And Milo Yiannopoulos sent a lot of trolls her way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the whole reason why she got a whole bunch of trolls and got a lot of death threats and rape threats. And she took it with good stride in the beginning by answering with quotes from Good Will Hunting, which sounded so amazing, and she's a genius for coming up with that. But eventually it wore her down, and she had to take a break, and I think she deleted her Twitter account. And
she talked to her editor, right?
Yeah, her editor was like, "You don't have to engage in everything. You can shut it down." And I think it was a couple of weeks later, she came back on Twitter, and I really liked the quote, the reason why she came back. And she said, "I like being present in spaces where I am not welcome, because you do not deserve to feel comfortable just because you're racist or sexist or small-minded."
Yeah.
The whole reason why she asked for non-male, non-white voices was because she wanted more marginalized writers so they can encourage younger, aspiring writers.
Essentially talking about representation, and she gave a couple examples of what reading pieces or seeing media by people who look like her means to her. I mean, the request isn't unreasonable, but she wrote this in her essay where to people in privilege, to people in privileged positions, calling for equality sounds like we're taking away their privilege.
Yeah.
Right. For you to gain, we have to lose. It's a zero-sum game to people who think that way. Yeah. And that's why they get so angry, because they don't want to lose anything.
I mean, that's why Crazy Rich Asians, it's a really big deal. I mean, the last Hollywood movie with an all-Asian cast was Joy Luck Club. And we had to wait 20 years.
25 years.
Yeah, 25 years for that. And same thing with Fresh Off the Boat. We had to wait a really long time.
That one was 20 years.
Yeah, it was also 20
All-American
years.
Girl. Yeah. And, we've had we've had a lot of good indies in between, but nothing with like studio money behind it.
Yeah, I mean, like Better Luck Tomorrow was not really funded by a really big studio.
That was funded by
was it John M. Chu? No, sorry, I get my
Justin Lin.
Justin Lin.
Yeah.
I get my directors mixed up.
Yeah, that one was funded through Justin Lin's credit cards,
and he's
Yeah.
still paying that off.
I'm sure he's paid them off by now. He's
but like
directing Star Trek, he's fine.
he's fine. I mean, but up till 3 years ago, I remember him saying like, "Yeah, this is why I don't make those types of movie right now because I'm still like paying it off." And I'm like, that's really sad.
But that gave him enough cred to land Tokyo Drift, which got him to where he is now, where he can actually try to do some of his own projects, which is pretty good. And that's the thing, right? Like it all starts with small steps. It starts with giving someone a chance to be noticed. And once they're noticed, people will start hiring them or writing for them and eventually get to the point where they can help others as well.
Yeah. I think right now, like we're still at this point where you say, like when you see like an Asian actor or an Asian work, you're like, I'm glad this exists, even if I don't like it. And it would be really nice to be in a space where you can just straight up say, I don't like this and not have consequences, not like be like, oh, I have to wait 20 years now for the next Asian American cast. Same thing with books. I mean, like, I would even say like up till like 3 years ago, we did not have this many books by Asian and Asian American authors. And earlier this year, I made that beautiful color-coded collage. I forgot the word. Collage of books that came out in 2017 by Asian and Asian American authors. And it was really sad. I mean, there were a lot of books. There were over 100 books on that collage, but it was really sad that I could fit it into a collage. Like, it should have been a lot more. And it was also really sad when I think about, like, up till 2 years ago, before I made that collage, there was a lot less. And then even before We Need Diverse Books, there was less.
Yeah.
And, like, in the book world, we are kind of we're reaching this point where there is quantity, and we are also getting quality from that quantity, because once you expand, you're bound to catch more good works, and
those good works are being made into movies and TV shows.
Basically, the reason why you're getting more movies and TV shows by Asian with Asian casts is because of books. Yeah. It starts on the page.
I mean, Crazy Rich Asians started as a book.
Yes, and we are reading that. We are reading as a book. We are reading that in August. So.
But yeah, so I like that was where her head was at. I hate that was why she got all this shit. And this is something that comes up. I forgot which essay. But she's talking about Canadian culture. And
yeah.
Yeah. And how a lot of it is like people don't like being reminded.
Yeah. I have a quote, and it's like a paragraph, but I will try to shorten it. And while Canada purports to be multicultural, Toronto in particular, a place where everyone is holding hands and cops are handing out ice cream cones instead of, say, shooting black men, our inability to talk about race and its complexities actually means that racism is arguably more insidious. We rarely acknowledge it, and when we do, we're punished, as if we're speaking badly of an elderly relative who can't help but make fun of the Irish. The white majority doesn't like being reminded that the cultural landscape is still flawed, still broken.
Yeah. I mean, Canada gets not a bad rap, but a good rap for being a more tolerant, nicer place to live. And what happens is that they've internalized that, well, that means we've solved racism. It doesn't exist. Where if you look at things like institutionalized racism, those still exist. But because people have convinced themselves that they're,
colorblind.
Yeah, it's like they don't talk about it. And when you do, it's like, wow. How it's the basic white response to being called out for racism, which is how dare you, right? Because we've somehow mixed up racism with bigotry.
Yes. Ooh, deep. It's a very deep topic that you can go on forever. And I guess I want to kind of close out my thoughts with how she mentioned that at her workplace, she got criticized for being loud. And it wasn't just because she was a woman, it was because she was a woman of color. Like her other white women colleagues would say, oh, like you're being too abrasive, too aggressive. And she would also mention how she would be advised to be one of the guys to move up the ladder. And she was like, I really hate that. And I don't want to do it. And it sucks. And like, I liked how she separated that, saying like, oh, not only am I a woman and there's like the ceiling, I'm also a woman of color. So there's a double layer.
Yeah.
And this is why intersectionality is really important. And that is my rant for that.
Yeah. In a book full of keen observations.
Keen observations with witty humor.
I really enjoyed it. I wasn't sure what I was going to, or how I was going to approach a book of essays. But like you said, it was really more of a memoir. And the stories were very personal and fun to read, which is great.
I'm glad you liked it because when I was reading it, I was like, will Marvin actually like this? I mean, like it doesn't really seem to like fit his taste in books. I hope he likes it or takes away like a
It
lot
reminded
of
me
it.
of like a one-woman show type of format where it's like a story of here is my life, here are a bunch of anecdotes. And it was really interesting just to glimpse, because she writes a lot about her thought process too, which is really interesting. Like I'm always find it interesting to see or to learn how people approach different subjects or perspectives. And I mean that's one of the reasons why I like reading, even though before this book club I hadn't done a lot of it.
You should be proud of yourself. You've read a lot. I actually have your books over there because we took a picture for our new banner image, if you guys haven't noticed on Twitter. But
nice.
Yeah, like now you have a library of books by Asian and Asian American authors.
Well, thank you, Rira, for the great idea. And on that note, I guess
I will tell a funny story. I was reading this at Starbucks, like publicly, and some white lady, like came up to me and was just like, "Oh, that's a really funny title. Like, what is it?" And I'm just like, "Oh, it's a collection of essays by like an Indian Canadian writer, and she talks about race and sexism and all this other stuff." And she was like, "Cool, like I'll check it out." And she walked away, and I'm like, This is why I like reading books in public.
Well, also, the book is very hot pink, so it's very eye catching.
It is very eye catching, but it also happened when I was reading Pachinko because the cover was really pretty, and they're like, "What is it about?" And I'm like, "Let me tell you, I am very good at selling books."
I did remember really quick about because I've been to Calgary a couple of times. I have some friends from Calgary, all Asians, by the way. There are a bunch of Asians in Calgary, which is, in case people don't know, in the province of Alberta, which is pretty much the Texas of Canada. And I don't think she mentioned this a lot, but they're cowboys in Calgary. Like they're
interesting.
But she did mention, because the 2 times I went to Calgary was for Calgary Stampede, which she, in her book, in her words, is the whitest event in the entire world, because it's a rodeo.
Yeah.
So that's fun. It was I recognize that. It was fun. It was fun to read her thoughts on Calgary because, like, yep, I don't disagree, but also at the same time, it was a lot of fun to like drink a lot and listen to country music.
Yeah, I think we talked enough about this book. I guess we'll close out.
Yeah, if you have any thoughts about the book that you'd like to share, again, please go on to our Goodreads forums. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this book. And again, our book club pick for the month of May is The Leavers by Lisa Koul. Paperback is out now.
It has been very it's been praised a lot by book reviewers, and it was nominated for like the National Book Award. So definitely has a lot of accolades. And we're going to try to get our friend Lily. Lily, I know you're listening to this. Because she read the book, and Lily's an adoptee, and like the main character in The Leavers is an adoptee. So I would definitely want to have her on the show. And she wrote like this very interesting essay on her blog. So definitely want her to expand on that. So Lily, come on our show again. This is your invitation.
Hit us up on Twitter. And that'll do it. As always, if you like what you hear, give us a rating review on Apple Podcasts. If you have any friends who you want to get into reading, introduce our podcast and let's see if they can get into it. And yeah, thanks again for listening to this episode of Books and Boba. See you guys later.
Keep reading.
This episode of Books and Boba was hosted by Marvin Yuet and re-reviewed and edited by Marvin Yuet. Books and Boba is a proud member of the Potluck Podcast Collective, a collective of podcasts featuring unique voices from the Asian American community. If you like Books and Boba, you might also like Saturday School, a pop culture history podcast hosted by journalist Ada Sang and film scholar Brian Hu, who highlight and discuss classic Asian American films. You can catch Saturday School and the other great programs of the Potluck Collective by going to the website www.podcastpotluck.com.